know about that?
That's
Wasn't quite
okay.
listening. I was just getting us out there.
Randy, do you guys track how many people join in?
Yes, we can do that.
So you can let, so we don't have to watch the ticker. You can get us that stats if we ask you later.
So far, we have 3 attendees come in, but yeah, we can track that.
Just curious whether it's 3 or 30, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't want to watch the ticker the whole way through.
Okay.
And I'll try and keep track of that too, Randy, but that would be awesome just to make sure that whoever I see at one point in time is accurate too.
Yeah. Well, my video and streaming all seems to work from the hotel room here, so that's encouraging.
Yeah, and you're not lagging or anything. Looks good.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was ready to show my face for about a minute and then close down the video and try and talk from there.
Tom, how many minutes after 4 do you want to start?
Oh, we'll give it 1 more minute maybe.
Okay.
Nobody new signing in. We've got 3 people, so. Unless it's like Marge and Zach and Paul that are the 3 that signed in.
It's not. We've got some great additional people from various areas of the college that are there. So
great. Well, Randy, do you want to let people in?
Yeah, the people have been coming in the last few minutes. We're up to 5 now. So do we want to go ahead and get started? Or
We'll go ahead and get started, and I'll ramble for a little bit and allow a few people to join us. So.
Okay.
Can you see that, Tom? Is that up?
I can.
Okay.
Wow. Somebody did a nice job with the presentation here. So are we letting people in yet, or?
Yes, they're there, and they're being let in as we go. So you're welcome to start.
Okay. So, well, I'll thank people for joining me first. My name's Tom Goodhue. I'm the capital construction manager for Lane and in charge of the bond project. I joined the campus middle of September last year. So I've been busy working on trying to understand the campus's needs, trying to understand what we promised the community when we got the bond, as well as figure out what we're doing. So I thought we would give you a bit of an update of what we've done and where we're trying to go over the next year or so. With the bond project, we did get over $125 million worth of funds to improve the campus. So that's pretty exciting. So what I'm going to try and go through, I've got about 6 or 8 slides that I'm going to go through. If you have questions, please type them into the chat. And then when we get to the end, Mira will take a little bit of time and we'll read through those questions and I'll try and answer what I can. And for those that maybe if I don't have an answer, I'll let you know that too. And we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can or try and post that. So with that, Mira, why don't you go to the next slide? So one of the first things as the project manager for this, I wanted to set together a series of principles about how we prioritize the various bond projects and how we're going to implement them. So the first one that came up was making sure safety, security of students, those things of students, employees, and visitors has to be at the top of the list. It was one of the big things that was in all the bond information that I saw. Certainly going with that is enhancing the student experience. And one of the things that I've learned in my time here is also we can do a lot as we improve the campus to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think that's one of the interesting things that I'm seeing coming up. And I think it's a great thing to put in. And as I go through some of the projects, I might be able to talk about some of that. Preventing significant facilities degradation and damage. A couple of projects, replacing roofs, making sure things don't fall apart. We'll talk about a couple of those things, but that puts them pretty high on the priority list, because if we can fix a roof before the water starts leaking and doing additional damage, saves us money in the long run. There's some other things that we're trying to do on that that's really important about that. Overall, as we go through, one of the big goals is to reduce the ongoing operation and maintenance costs, because maintenance and operations costs drain a lot of the campus budget. So if we're spending money on operations and maintenance, we can't spend it on the academic programs and bringing things to the students. So seems like an important and a great thing for college to be able to offer more to the students than just maintaining buildings. Also really want to develop inviting and conducive spaces to learning. So that'll come through a range of things. And in combination with that, looking at what are the long-range plans where the campus is currently working on the strategic plan. So some of those things have come in. Before I joined, they went through and did an overall facilities master plan that gave us a lot of great background information. Some of that's rolling into the strategic plan. But as we're doing that and using those big master plan ideas and the strategic initiatives to really create facilities that support both the existing programs, but also looking at academic programs for the future. There are a couple of projects that have been going on. A couple of the first projects we're getting going on, the academic side has really dove in and really thinking about what they can do with the academic, with rethinking some of the academics. So I think that's a really exciting thing as well. And I'll talk about some of that in the future. And then some of the more simple things, hopefully they're simpler at least, is looking at improving the existing occupancy of the building. There's a lot of things that, one of the things that on any campus that tends to happen is that over time, departments get scattered. There are certain things that, small group moves out and a couple of people move into an office and departments get rearranged, things like that. So one of the things that we'd like to do is over the next 5 years or so is look at how we can start to combine departments back together in a logical sense and group them so that you don't have these onesie twosies offices, often strange buildings and odd people out there, or trying and see what we can do to combine these departments in. But on the other side of that, there's also this idea of wanting to mix, make sure we don't silo departments so they don't have just their own space, but they're working, because when students go out in the real world, it's rare that they're that focused. We have to work with a whole range of people. Just as I have to talk to all of you now, I can't just develop these buildings and design them without the users involved. Whether it's the diesel mechanics or our business students or our healthcare people, they all have to work with others. So making sure we keep that in mind and how we can integrate that during their education as well. One of the neat things that the bond allows us to do is leverage some matching funds. First couple of projects, we have some state matching funds, which is a great start. We're looking at how we can get more of those, but also starting to see what we can come up with some business partners out there that, particularly for some of the tech training and some of that stuff, what can we get them to, in order to help them better, are they willing to put their money where their mouth is? If they want training, are they willing to, whether it's through grants to help support students and help reduce their cost while they're here, offering them jobs, as they go through things like that, or whether they're actually willing to put money in and help us do some of this renovation or provide equipment to train students on. All great opportunities that we'll be looking at. And then the kind of the final big principle that we're looking at is looking to minimize construction impacts to campus users. Construction on campus is always impactful. It's never something that we can sneak without anybody noticing. But it is going to impact you, and I'm sorry about that, but it's also an exciting thing I love. But as I'm doing it, trying to limit what we call surge space. So relocating people, trying to minimize that, or if we are relocating people to renovate a building, try and make that relocation last. So if we relocate somebody out of a building to renovate it, that they're really getting into a long-term environment. And both from the staff and the programs, but it also makes a big difference to students. Students that are here for 2 or 3 years in a construction project could take 2 or 3 years. One of the things I've learned in my career is that if a student comes in their first day and we start bouncing around where that office is or that classroom is that they're supposed to go to, they can get discouraged really easily and not come back. And I want to make sure that students know where to go and can find, whether it's an advisor or their classroom or their faculty, that they really know where to go, or it's a very intentional change that is well promoted and very often obvious and not tucked down in the basement of some strange building that they've never been to. So that's the simple part of my, that. Yeah, go ahead to the next one. Thanks, Mira. Couple of projects that are already done that I got to thank the great facility staff that was here before I got here. Building 6 roof replacement. That was one when I talked about preventing damage. I'm told that building was leaking pretty badly before this. So they were able to get a new roof in on a good share of that building where it was leaking and stop that leaking. It's held up this spring. So that's a fabulous thing. And the other one that they were able to jump on was track resurfacing. And that's one that that really starts to become things like a track resurfacing is really a safety issue, because as those tracks wear down and they age, our athletes can be injured. We don't want that to happen, as well as it prevents, if you let them degrade too much, it's a higher cost to rebuild it rather than just resurface it. So that's a couple of great things. Next slide. A couple other things that are underway. Our IT group is working on both infrastructure replacement and cybersecurity. Those are well underway. A big part of the infrastructure replacement is getting new computers for staff. Hopefully, some of you have already received those or have recognized or been reached out to on how to do that. They'll be issuing new contemporary, for most part, laptops is the direction. But as from a cybersecurity standpoint, not being on current operating systems, whether it's the Apple operating system or a Microsoft operating system, when those things age out, they leave holes for people to sneak in and get into our network so that they can corrupt our network or sneak in. So seems like a kind of a silly thing, but new laptops, new computers for you, which I'm seeing some pretty old ones out there, are a big deal. The other thing they're working on are our data center and upgrading a bunch of that. So another spot to make sure that those things are getting going and have the most updated servers and security things in there, again, for those firewalls, so that things are safe and we don't have to worry about losing data or people breaking in and taking data. Another project that I'm sad to say is a little bit behind where I think everybody hoped it was, due to this emergency online education due to COVID. IT classroom modernization of classrooms. We got rather distracted just trying to provide basic services to students because we weren't using the classrooms. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, some of the federal funds that have been coming in that we've been able to access have been able to allow us to do get some new hardware for classrooms as well. So one of those things we'll be looking at and upgrading things more. So next slide, Mira. A couple of the big projects that are really I'm deep into. First one was one that was a big portion from the master plan as well as in the bond, a new health professions building to bring, that'll bring the dental clinic and the related dental programs back on to main campus. It will also house the emergency medical systems or services programs and the medical assistant program. So it'll be a new building, about 28,000 square feet of new space that will create space for these programs that are crammed into building 30, as well as the dental clinic being off campus. So it'll, by pulling the medical assistant and emergency and medical services out of building 30, it'll allow those other programs in that group, in the health professions group, to a little bit of breathing room. It's one of the fastest growing programs we have on campus. The image you see here, where we're at in that process is we're working on programming, and we're also trying to choose a site. We started as we got into this between our facilities group and our design staff and the EMS and the health professions group. We started with, we looked at 7 sites. We're down to 2 sites now. The 7 sites, the Lot L site on the south side of campus was one that was listed in the master plan, but when we looked at that, it really had no affinities with the existing emergency or the medical services, the health profession services. The remote distance from that, while it had some great opportunities for the campus, it really didn't make sense. So as we looked at that, in exchange for that, we looked at parking lot A and B, whether we could take over some of that space. We've kind of eliminated the lot B site, thinking that the site A probably is a better of those 2 sites. So that site A is still one that we're under consideration. The other thing we looked at, because dental has things over on in building 8, as well as trying to find other sites along close to building 30, we started to look over in parking lot N to think about that. And then as we were standing out there, we said, hey, what if we kind of shift over to the end of the soccer stadium, move into there? And then it shifted into what we're calling N3, which is tucked between along where the grounds building and the performing arts storage building is, between building 5 and 6. And that's actually one of our favorite sites right now. Could provide us with a great entryway into a new face out to 30th Avenue, which rather than showing this kind of what is our back of house to the rest of the public when they come in, we could have one of these premier buildings there, as well as really develop and connect things between Bristow Square and the athletic facilities. So that's some exciting things going on there. Over the summer, we'll be finalizing that, and I'm sure come fall, as the summer goes on, we'll announce more about that and be talking about that more in the fall. Another project that I've got kicked off, we've selected the architect and will be working on that. It is upgrades on the Florence Center out in Florence. By the way, both of these projects are ones that we have state matching funds. On the health professions building, we have $8 million from the state. So it's almost a third of the funding for that project is coming from the state. So major, leveraging of our funds. For the Florence Center, we've got a $1.5 million grant to do seismic stabilization. So again, about a quarter of the overall building project there. So we'll be improving that building, making sure it stands up should we get an earthquake. The building also was built in the 1970s, and virtually all the mechanical and electrical systems and plumbing systems original to it and are not doing particularly well out in that coastal climate. So we'll be replacing all of that. And while we're at it, because we're going to be disturbing a lot of things, we're going to be looking at upgrading classrooms and some of the other educational facilities. But we're also, one of the fun things about this is how can we use this site better? I think one of the things that COVID has taught us is that there's some remote learning potentials that we might be able to actually leverage that Florence Center a little better in some of this hybrid learning thing. So something we're working on. We're talking with a lot of different users around campus about, certainly with the administration, with Russ, who manages, is the dean out there. He's really excited about that, but there are a lot of the other deans that are really excited about what they might be able to do out there. So again, exciting project to move forward. Next slide. Next couple of slides. Building 12. This is one that kind of jumped to the front because there's a fair amount of unused space in it. There's the bay that you actually have in this photograph here. There used to be an auto body program that was shut down a number of years ago. So it's been empty for a while. It's being used for warehouse space, which does not seem like that is necessarily the best use of what could be great academic spaces. This is also a program that Grant Matthews dove in, and he, along with Chris Wren, have been spending the last 2 days, and it will continue tomorrow. They dove in and brought in a consultant to really rethink what the academic program should be for this advanced technology hub. So really starting from the ground up and considering how we want to revamp all of the various programs that would fit in there, and are they the right programs, rather than just redo that. We know that the machine technologies will stay in there, the construction technology will stay in there, but what should those programs be? And are we doing the right thing? What should we be doing? And I've been listening in on some of those conversations, and it's been amazing the turnout, one, of industry and community partners that want to be involved in this, the ideas that have come up in it. So a lot of great things that you're going to hear about that. One of the other things about Building 12 is it's got public safety in it right now. And if we want to renovate it, we're going to have to move them. And in the facilities master plan, it was identified to put the public safety group in the lower level of Building 15. So we're going to be starting that, planning for that here pretty soon. And the other thought there was that Building 15, the top floor of that would be some new labs and expansion labs for our sciences group in Building 16, which will be another project I'll talk about. So one of the things I mentioned in my principles, we're going to have to vacate Building 15. So one of the things we're going to be working on through the summer and over the next year, before we, in the process of vacating Building 15, a lot of those people will be moving into Building 10, as well as some other spots, but really trying to get them a long-term home rather than just bumping them out and putting them in whatever cubby hole we can find. So we're working through some of that stuff this summer to relocate some of those folks and give some spaces to it. I mentioned Building 16, which has all our science labs in it. As I'm programming Building 15 over the next year, we're also going to be looking at Building 16 to program some of the science labs over there to make sure we build the right labs in Building 15. Knowing that we're going to replace and do things, I'd like to make sure we know what we need. We know we need a lot of things, but what's the best spot for some of these things, and how do we reconfigure that? So, okay, great. And then some more, I say mundane, but parking lot maintenance. Back to safety, as well as long-term cost. Our parking lots most of the paving or a lot of the parking lot is original to the 1960s and 70s here. It's held up reasonably well, but for those of us that have been around since the 1960s, we don't wear quite as well as we might like to think we would. So we're going to invest a little bit in that and keep it from having to get to the point where there's either damage or trip and fall hazards, which is happening in a few spots out there, and keep the maintenance down on that. So it is safe. We'll be looking at some of those things. Another project that I really discovered here after I got here is, again, back to some of our original infrastructure. There's this poor, lonely fire hydrant that's buried behind things. It, again, is from back in 1967, and we have a number of them on. And fire hydrants really aren't designed to last that long. So we're going to need to replace some of those things. There's also a number of concerns I have about pathways for fire services that right now, to get through to Bristow Square in the core of the campus, a fire truck would have a very, very difficult time to get there. I'd be curious if anybody wants to tap into the chat where they think this fire hydrant is, if they think they know, because it is so hidden. And I would hate to think that fire department would show up and really have to struggle to find a fire hydrant after they struggled to get in to the fire hydrant, and then struggle if there's a fire hydrant, a fire or some other emergency. Time is critical in that. If there's an active harmer, the pathways we have are not conducive to being able to get into campus. So one of the things I'm working on is looking at upgrading a lot of the pathways in the main campus. The other thing that'll come in with that is these pathways will then become all ADA compliant, and it'll help a lot of the wayfinding as we go through campus, which is something that I have been on campus throughout the pandemic, and I can't tell you how many people I have had to give directions to or virtually walk them to different buildings because they've been trying to find something to get with the limited service offices on campuses. So I hope to really be able to improve that. Next slide. This moves into more some of the background work I've been doing. Talked about the initial projects, but one of the things that I've done, this spreadsheet lays out about 30 different funding pools that I've balanced out that totals over $130 million when you include the $9.5 million that we've gotten from the state already. What we're going to do and how we're going to allocate it. One of the reasons I did that is it's early on. It's really easy to think, oh, we got a lot of money, and start spending it and figure, oh, while we're at it, we'll go ahead and do this. But I really wanted to divide it out. This is something that has been provided to the Board of Education. They've seen it, and it is posted on the Bond Oversight Committee. Has its own part of board docs, and we do that. This is something I'm going to be updating quarterly, and this one is from April, and I'm starting to work on the updates. You'll see some of the dates that'll change. Not a whole lot going on with funding changes yet, but trying to look at, and on this I have things like, I see 3 critical pillars when I review a project. Are we on target with the scope that we intended? Are we on the schedule that we intended? And are we within the budget? And if not, why? So I have set up a red dot, a yellow triangle, or a green dot, a yellow triangle, or a red square, which fortunately we don't have any of those yet on this here. But if something's going wrong, a red square says everybody should be paying attention here really fast. Yellow at this point, most of these are things that either have gone slower. A lot of these have been due to what I refer to as the emergency remote learning, the COVID, the fact that we haven't been here. Hasn't been the priority to look at ADA access issues as much because we've been trying to deal with it, make sure that those students are still served in the online platforms and things like that. But and it's also really hard for me to visually observe when there's no students on campus. Really frustrating for me as a campus planner and designer to try and design projects when I don't see students using the campus. So learning a lot from you faculty and staff that are here that I've been able to talk to, but that's it. So next slide. And that really brings me to the end of my slides. Did want to say where you can find out. I mentioned the Bond Oversight Committee. You can always send an email to me if you have curiosity. We also have, on the Lane website, we have a bond page that has some general information on it. And there's also our facilities management and planning webpage that has a lot of things, because while there's a lot going on with the bond, there's also an awful lot of projects that are going on with facilities. Building 19 is a project that we've got a seismic grant that they're breaking ground on right now. The contractor's just starting to mobilize this week. That's impacting that building on the original portion of that. So, but that's truly a facilities project. It has no bond funds, but I'll mention it for good measure. So with that, I'll take a quick breather. And did we get any questions, Mira?
There was a guess about where the fire hydrant was from Ellen Osterkamp, and she guessed that it was outside of building 11.
You're close. It is right outside of. It is on the corner, the northeast corner of the center building. So, yeah, so that would be right outside of building 11.
Nice job, Ellen.
So Ellen, you probably realize you wouldn't be able to really get a fire truck to that fire hydrant. So it's one of those things. So anything else going on with the chat? Or
Ellen said it is outside my office window. Oh, so she cheated a little bit. That's
okay.
Perfect. That's a good cheat. We have one question from Gloria Jarvis. And she said, if Site A is used for the new building, how will the lost parking spaces be restored?
That's a great question. We'll probably lose 20 or 30 parking spaces when we do that. We're going to reconfigure. If we use that one, the plan would be to reconfigure a portion of Lot A so we regain a certain amount of those parking spaces. So looking at that, and rather than, again, I've only been on campus when I haven't seen a full parking lot here in the last year, so I apologize. But between all the gravel lots, we've also looked at whether we would improve some of the emergency lots that were done a number of years ago, the gravel lots, that we might do some improvements on that. And there's also some potential to reconfigure a few other lots to get them a little more efficient. So we are looking at that as part of our parking, but it's one of the prior things that we're weighing, and between everything and access, and particularly on that west side where is kind of the perceived front entrance and where everybody seems to want to find their first parking spot. So it's really a concern. And if we bring the dental clinic back, that's one of the things because that has its own parking needs. So it compounds the problem if we lose parking as well as need more parking for their dental clients. So definitely a great observation. Hope that answers the question.
There's a question from Ellen, and she says, if the site next to Building 6 is used for the health professions building, how will it affect performing arts and entrances to the building, as well as access to Building 5 for dance classes?
During construction, it'll be a little bit of a challenge, I'll be honest there. But the goal is to really improve it overall. The site we're looking at, one of the things that, as the bond and the master plan pointed out, is to bring a better access in there. And what we're really looking at, the design I looked at yesterday at least, is bringing a new pathway up by this building along the north side of building 6 up into Bristow Square by the gym. And so you would come up a main ADA broad pedestrian pathway to come up, and you would actually come into Bristow Square and approach the Performing Arts Center from the front rather than kind of around the back side, which I think could be a really great and be a much more pleasant and welcoming experience than I think what is probably going on now for performances. And I've heard it would be set back, that fire lane and that balance would be maintained and actually improved, better landscaping or some improvements on the landscaping there. So the studios that overlook that fire lane would still be maintained, and we are talking about how we can improve that and clean that up as well. So hopefully that helps.
That's all that we have in our Q&A right now. Are there any other questions?
Wow, this is too easy. Mary, you must have a tough question for me.
We talk too much, so I all my questions are answered, Tom. But I'll try and think of one for next time to really stump you.
I'll take that. I'll take that in a positive light that we talk too much.
You should.
Well, unless somebody else has something, maybe we'll let people have a half an hour back for the day. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. It looks like we've been recording it, and I think we'll find a place and announce where we can post this as well. So just for those of you that are out there, and I thank you all for joining us, and enjoy your day.
Thanks, everybody.